Hello, my name is Guillermo Garcia, and the book for which I made a summary is called Where Good Ideas Come From: The Natural History of Innovation by Steve Johnson. The book is divided in 7 chapters, which are the following: The Adjacent Possible, Liquid Networks, The Slow Hunch, Serendipity, Errors, Exaptation, and Platforms. Each chapter talks about how environments can be adapted in order for innovations to take place, innovative ideas to be generated and developed. So let's begin with the first chapter, which is the adjacent possible. What is the adjacent possible? The adjacent possible is something like depending on the time at which one person is living, is the extent to which this person can innovate. So how much the technology, depending on the age, permits a person to innovate in a next level, so to say. The book uses an example that is related to biology. So for example, at the beginning of life, so to say, before life was created in the world, the atmosphere was composed of very basic molecules, which were methane, which were ammonia, for example, and eventually these molecules combine each other, forming each time newer possibilities, and eventually forming the basic blocks of life. And afterwards, now that these blocks of life were these basic blocks of life were created, so the adjacent possible was for these molecules to rearrange themselves, to reaccommodate in order to form what could be a cell membrane and eventually a cell with all its organelles and everything. So depending on how much the molecules rearrange themselves was the extent to which the adjacent possible was moving behind in order for progress to take place and in order to eventually life occur. The second chapter is called Liquid Networks. In this chapter, it's interesting that the author tells us that the denser and the more differentiated environments are the ones where innovation tends to take place more often, and also that usually, contrary to what we usually expect, innovations don't take place as eureka moments or as epiphanies like most authors like to narrate them, but instead. So, for example, Kevin Dunbar made a research in a microbiology laboratory and tried to record exactly at what moments did innovations take place. And to his surprise, and to everyone's surprise, they didn't take place in the laboratory during while the researchers are doing their lab work, but instead they take place in meeting rooms, because it's in meeting rooms when the different points of view are exchanged, and the maybe some assumptions that the researcher is doing are not assumptions anymore, so the researcher starts considering this type of stuff, and then he has something like a complemented hunch based on that. And speaking about hunches, the third chapter is the slow hunch, and the author here tells us that hunches do not take place completely in a single moment. So you cannot expect to have a hunch and instantly have an epiphany or instantly have a world-changing idea that really these things do not work like this. And he also tells us that in order for an environment to be favorable, in order for hunches to develop each other, the workplace, for example, must permit the the inventor to take time to do some research or complement his or her ideas, because these hunches usually don't can take even decades. So a company must have this kind of flexibility in order for their employees to take to invest their time in developing these hunches. And the example that the book gives in this case is Tim Berners-Lee's example while he was developing the World Wide Web at CERN, at the physics laboratory in Switzerland. And well, so the fourth chapter is serendipity. And serendipity, this concept talks about how happy accidents happen, so to say. Happy because actually the inventor is expecting this accident. Even though the inventor was not expecting this accident to happen, he suddenly realizes that it happens, and he sort of do something about it and tries to innovate from it. And for example, there's a very interesting argument in the book, in this chapter, because there are some critics that state that nowadays, because of the development of the web, is these serendipitous moments do not happen that often anymore, because people just limit themselves to research for what they need, and do not look forward to research more about about different topics in which they are interested. They argue that, for example, when you are in a library looking for a book, you might take another book because you like the cover, or because you like the colors, whatever. And also, when you're reading a newspaper, a physical newspaper, you can be looking for maybe for the comic book section, or you might be looking for the sports section, but then you spot some interesting article about something else, and you can become interested on it, and it's easier to find this information. It's more probable, according to them, to find this information. But the author of this book tells us that, in contrast, there's no opponent for serendipitous moments to the web, only in the case where the user is actually seeking it. So if the user is continuously watching, for example, a YouTube video, and they are jumping from one video to another in order to look for more information, then it's more probable that these serendipitous moments happen. Because new information from different insights, from different points of view, you are being bombarded by it. So then the book talks about errors in the fifth chapter, and it's important to speak about errors because as there are a lot of examples of how errors in our experiments, or like in the invention of the pacemaker, can make actually a difference in an invention or an innovation, because, and the book speaks about the importance of the relative importance of using or not company strategies like Six Sigma and this kind of stuff, where their errors are limited to practically none. So during the quality control assessments, the environment in the company is so sterile because of this that errors are usually don't happen. But in contrast, the author explains that it is important to have some mistakes margin in order to contemplate some stuff that normally would not be contemplated. Then the next chapter is acceptation. The acceptation refers to things that, for example, are developed for some use but actually are used in some other stuff. And the book uses the example of the bird's feathers and how they were originally used for covering the birds from the cold, but then as the birds experimented by using them for flying, then they realized that they could glide with them thanks to their thanks to having them. They could glide easier. Um, and the book uses for this some example Apple, which is considered the most innovative company in the world, and how this company for example, in their innovation process is not like a regular company in which the product is designed and then it's adapted to the engineering possibilities of the company, but instead in Apple all the people from different fields of expertise are talking with each other, and they are exploring the possibilities in which they can actually work together in order to develop a product with high perfection standards. And also this he tells us that he analyzes different innovative personalities like Darwin and other scientists, and he finds out that actually these scientists took themselves time to induce research and investigate about many different fields of expertise, like not just limit themselves to what they normally do, but try to explore different areas and try to connect each other so that they can so that eventually they can do some innovation based in both of them simultaneously. And finally, the seventh chapter is about platforms and how either companies or social media are good for promoting innovation. And the book uses example of Twitter as a good idea as a exchanger platform, and also uses the example of the applied physics laboratory of the Johns Hopkins University, and how thanks to the innovative environment where people were constantly exchanging ideas, the eventually two people could invent the GPS, the global positioning system, based on their possibility of tracking the exact location of the Sputnik satellites and doing reverse engineering with it. And that will be all. Thanks for watching my summary. I hope you like it.